this education overload of stuff that you can hear. And I started to really pick up once I decided to listen how the longer people were in this business that hadn't achieved a certain level, the less likely they were going to achieve it because the more confused they were than they were originally.
Hey, welcome back to my channel. My name is Crystal, and thank you so much for joining me today. This is my channel where I talk about my experience while in Amway through an organization called LTD. And I've been able to share the tactics I used while I was in there, how I sponsored people, my experience, how I felt about it, how I left, why I left, and all the above. I've also been able to meet people who were also in Amway through these organizations like LTD or Brit Worldwide. And it's been a really interesting time just getting to know more about Amway as a whole, LTD, and a lot of the stuff that went on that I didn't even know about. In today's interview, I speak to Robert Michael, and he talks about his time while he was in LTD, sponsored by one of the top diamonds, the top diamond actually of LTD, and what he went through, his experience, and some things that he wanted to share with people who are already in LTD, who want to get out, who are not sure if they should stay. He has some really good insight to share with you. So sit back and enjoy the interview, and I'll come back afterwards for more information on the FTC and more interviews to come. Enjoy. Hey, Robert. Um, Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you reaching out to me via email and telling me a bit about your story and kind of your journey with Amway and LTD. So I'm so excited to talk with you and, let the audience hear more about you and your story. So introduce yourself. Tell me a little about yourself.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time, Crystal. This is one of those things that I think a lot of people, um, once you go through something like what LTD specifically kind of puts you through with the mind, people try to kind of just step away from it and cut ties, and you don't want to talk about it. And sometimes it's embarrassing to talk about it. And so, first and foremost, my name is Robert Morris, and I got in touch with Crystal after seeing one of her videos, and this was kind of a chapter in my life that I was just kind of done with, but I felt really pulled to rip open a wound and kind of talk about it again, because I think if I could help my younger self um, understand a little bit more about what was going to be involved with building a what I'm going to refer to as an Amway business from now on, I might have saved myself a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of heartache. And so that's what I wanted to talk about. But me myself, I'm just a run of the mill guy who all my life really was beholden to my family's lifestyle that was really kind of turned upside down by certain financial events. So I was from a very young age wanting to figure out the difference between people's lives that are not ruled by money and people's lives that just every conversation, it seems like, and every argument starts with a financial issue. And so from a very young age, I started investing in the stock market and looked at businesses and started to get involved with building businesses. And so I I'm just a guy that's coming at this with a different look, I think, than a lot of people look at Amway Ltd, rather than just being like nobody approached me. I approached them. Um, and I just have a whole story that's a little bit different. Now I'm looking over here because Crystal's over here. I'm gonna try to focus my thoughts on the camera here. I'm not really used to being interviewed. I'm used to just kind of teaching, right, and just kind of talking. So I'm gonna try and do that. I want y'all to, if you're watching this, try and get two things out of this, right? I'm not here to bash Amway or LTD, and I'm not here to color your perspective. What I want to do is kind of give you an objective perspective, so that you can make a one, if you're trying to decide whether you should involve yourself in a business like this, just specifically within LTD or within Amway, what you should really look at that maybe you're not going to be presented with unless you ask questions or try to dig a little bit deeper. And two, if you are watching this and you're already involved, maybe you pulled this YouTube video up because you want to know, should you continue to go down that road, or you're trying to get out and you feel as if all the decisions that led you to failing in that business were all on you, because a lot of that kind of mindset comes from like, you only fail if you quit and you're a quitter and quitter up, and so going through that, if you're going through that, I want you to understand that even people that have very seasoned business backgrounds can be pulled into the lure of the lifestyle that is sold through LTD. And that was kind of a long introduction, but I hope that kind of
No,
lets
no,
you know where I
that's
set up.
yeah, no, that's perfect actually, because that's what I want, I think, everybody to hear. And especially coming from your perspective, I would love for you to really start from the beginning.
Okay.
What was going on in your life when you got sponsored? How old were you? Take us to
Mhm.
when you actually first got in.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So I'll take you real far back a little bit and just kind of speed it up from there. Again, going back to when I was younger, the first time I got involved with LTD, I was 18 or 19, somewhere in there. And it was a place where I gravitated towards because people around me at the time were talking about this cool new way to make money. And I have been a very um, focused person in the financial arena since I was very young. I got exposed to the stock market at a very young age and started investing at a very young age. And so I found myself at a crossroads when I was around 18 or 19 that allowed me to kind of see Amway Ltd as an opportunity for building a new business. But then again, I also was a 19-year-old that had just found out he was getting ready to have a kid. I was a 19-year-old that had also been driven into a lot of debt because of some mistakes in a previous business. And so I was really not looking at it from an objective point of view, guys, because see, when you really think about getting involved with business, I don't know a lot of 19-year-olds that know enough to really understand what you're getting into. And so the first time I got involved with it, it really was just a trial by fire, like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing ever. And then because of some circumstances in my life, again, a 19-year-old just figuring out he's getting ready to be a father, having to figure out stuff going on in my life, I had to go get what I would call a real job at a factory making tires and working a swing shift rotation. And so my Amway business very quickly took a back seat. But there were things that I saw in being a part of LTD when I was 19 that you got to put on the shelf, because as I came back to it, where Crystal's talking about my next involvement years later was when I had gotten out of all that. I had kind of built my life back to a place where I had what I would call comfortable control of what I was doing on a daily basis. All right. But I didn't have a whole lot of new things to challenge me. And so I was looking every day for franchises to get involved with, for things that I could do that would allow me to build uh, a next phase asset. When I was looking at Amway the second time, which is really the time that we need to focus on because this is where I learned a lot. I was looking for an asset to build that would allow me to take the next, not 2 years, not 3 years, but 10 years of my life, consolidate it into some serious work, and come out of something with an asset that allowed me to 10x the amount of money that I was able to invest in the stock market, you know. So I was at a place in my life where I had really kind of capped out what I could do. And I'm looking. And how it came about, I don't really remember, but lo and behold, I come across LTD's website and I emailed the staff there because I remember being involved with LTD way back when I was 19. And I
Right.
really didn't have a whole lot of negative like connotations towards it when I was that young. A lot of the things that I actually later attribute to some of my success in life came out of my 19-year-old experience, not from LTD specifically, but from the book list they gave me. Some of the CDs that they were giving out at the time allowed me to kind of start a personal growth path
Mm-hmm.
that led me to building into myself a person that I could be confident in being on a daily basis, right? And so I do have to first and foremost say that that piece of it
Mm-hmm.
can be positive for
Yeah.
some people,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't necessarily, and we'll come back to this, you don't necessarily need to go through a business entity to be able to do that. And you don't necessarily have to, you know, but I was I was at a place where I thought, hey, this could be an option because every franchise that I was getting involved with, one, I really wasn't willing to put up that much money up front to get involved with it. Or two, I just felt like it wasn't going to be that much fun. You know, I've been in the restaurant business. I didn't like it. I've been in other service related businesses. And when you go to look at franchises, if you've never done it before, you realize that most franchises are built on a service related or a fast food related type of industry. And so LTD, when I started to relook at Amway, I started to realize that it presented me all the things that I loved about being in business for myself. It presented me the ability to go out and build a team. It presented me the ability to stretch myself outside of my comfort zone again and really kind of try and learn how to build this organization, this marketing entity that was going to eventually not just pay me, but allow me to see for years to come fruits of my labor in building up other people. And so that's my thought process. So I email Amway first and I say, hey, I want to get involved. And then I remember LTD and I email LTD. And the first person, none of this would have happened had the first person to get back to me not have been LTD. Because you can go right now to Amway's website. And if you want to become an IBO, you can send them your email address and you have to wait for somebody to email you back and say, hey, this is how you get involved in the Amway business. It gets sent out to random IBOs. But LTD got back to me first. And funny enough, the person that and I'm going to use names and Crystal can block them out if she wants to because I have to just tell the story. So um the person that got back to me was the person that was my upline platinum back when I was involved in Amway when I'm 19. And so I tell you all that story to get back around to here I am at 20 something years old,
Right.
seeing this guy who I remember the night he went platinum. And in Amway, a platinum business is like the beginning foundation of building something profitable. So I remember him going platinum, and now you meet him again and you realize that all the success that you think you have, just the picture that is painted is, whoa, I'm in the wrong place. I have not, he's done so much more with, you know, we've only been apart from each other about 5 or 6 years. And, you know, he's gotten here where I've gotten, you know, here type of thing. And it begins to, that's the first introduction begins to paint you a picture of this is the best business model to be in. You have never seen how business can be if you're not involved with Amway. And then it becomes okay, well, yeah, Amway's great, but the way to do it is the LTD way. And so that's how I got involved with it.
Interesting. So you started off when you were 19. Life happened. You kind of went away, came back in your 20s, about 24, 25, you would say.
Yeah, 24, 25, let's say that. I'm really bad with age. You know, my wife has to remind me that I just turned 33. So yeah, let's say 24.
Okay, 24. And you reach out to Amway and LTD. LTD gets back to you first.
Mhm.
And that's kind of how you got back into it.
Mhm.
So when you got back in the second time, you saw this guy who was platinum, his
Mhm.
lifestyle was more advanced than what yours was at the time, and you were kind of sold on dream is kind of what I'm hearing. Like you were kind of seeing like
Yes.
how it could be.
Yes. And I actually, since you said that, I'll add to that. Okay. So here's how a guy, and at least where I am at life in the time, gets sold on a dream. Okay. You got to understand where I come from. Okay. I come out of from 19 to about 24, working my butt off, grinding every day to get out of debt, to get out of Firestone, which, if you've never worked swing shift rotation in a tire plant, it is not a fun life. And for anybody that does that or has a parent that does that, look, I get it. I'm not downing what you're doing. Those are honorable jobs to have, but I don't think that anybody wakes up one day. When you're a kid and you go to school and you say what you dream of doing, I'll be a fireman, be a policeman. You don't say I want to be a Firestone tire builder. It's just not a dream of anybody. And so I grinded to get myself out of it. And then I grinded to get myself into a business where now I am not just working there. I've invested in it. I've become a part of the family in the business. And so now I'm this young 24-year-old, not to toot my own horn, but literally one of the youngest television executives on the East Coast because of my 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 proximity to the success of others at the time. And so everything that I had done up until that point had been about getting myself to a place where I could be not only confident in who I was, but felt success in life. And then I go by chance email a guy that I haven't seen in years and sit down with him. And the backdrop, ladies and gents, is a beautiful picturesque farm with a mansion in the background. You drive up, the gate opens, you go in, you walk by all these expensive horses, and you sit down and you start talking to them about life. And you just realize that your life, all these years that you put in, it doesn't stack up. Whether it's true or not at this point is not up for suggestion, because your objectivity is totally thrown out because you think, look, I have learned at the feet of wealthy people how to invest in entertainment and how to invest in businesses. And here's this guy sitting here sipping an excess energy drink with me at 12 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of wealthy people that I work with that don't live that way. Okay. And so should that have been a red flag? Probably. But when you are looking for something else and you see that, you say, well, if he lives this way and his dad is the one that mentored him, and his how much better does his father live? And if that tracks, how am how am I tracking with where I want to be versus how he's tracking? And he just doesn't look as stressed out as me. He doesn't
Mm,
look as as worried as I am, because even at that point in my life, you know, sure, I had some financial success, but I wasn't anywhere near, having done enough work that I could, just not be worried about where my income was going to come from in 2 or 3 months, that kind of thing. But he didn't seem to be worried about any of it. And so that's the picture I want to paint for y'all, is that when I say, when Crystal says you're kind of you kind of get blinded by the light of the lifestyle. It can happen to the best of us. It can happen to anybody that just wants that. And so I think one of the things I would like to say before I go further is, you've got to realize that if you've never been exposed to real high level financial success, it doesn't work that way. There is no live on the beach, do nothing, and cash checks every day lifestyle that is real. Honest to goodness, hardworking people that are wealthy and build businesses that have impact on the world. They do it, and that's what they love doing, and they don't want to stop it. They don't live a lifestyle of let's jump from beach to beach and live on the beaches of the world. So that should be a red flag, but it wasn't.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, and
But
so it was easy for me to go from that meeting, leave there, and without even thinking about the financials of it, say, I think at that point I had decided I'm going to do it. Now, I didn't sign up, I didn't decide to go all in because I wasn't looking again for, you know, a 2 year thing where I can get rich quick. I was looking for a place to build a asset. I was going to grind for the next 10 years doing this thing.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, that is so interesting. So it sounds like you got exposed to a top level person because you're
Mm-hmm,
driving
mm-hmm,
up, you're seeing the lifestyle, and you're kind of in awe of it because this
mm-hmm,
person isn't putting in much work. It seems like they're living this lavish lifestyle. They're sitting back drinking excess all day, and you're kind
mm-hmm,
of like, what am I doing wrong? It sounds like,
mm-hmm,
like what can I do to kind of build this thing for 10 years so I can live the life that they're living?
100%.
So after that, did you end up putting in the work? How did you
Well,
and Amway actually end up going?
all right. So it goes down to there's there's a process when you invest in a business, okay? And that process should be the next thing to do is okay, I want to see the financials of this thing before I get involved. How do I know that what you're making is really what you're making? But because the lifestyle is sold to you in such a way, I never really asked that question. And because of the investment being so little upfront, I just I just began to jump in before I really started to be um the objective person that I should have been at the time. And even so, my wife's in the background kind of seeing that I'm looking at something, but not really realizing that I'm already kind of all in. And yeah, I did start doing the work. And I started learning from Stephen that the the way to build a business like this is just different. It's it's instead of the grind mentality, he seemed to make it, hey, all you got to do is start living your life with the idea that you're going to meet as many people as possible and throw them in a filter. And from the filter is going to come out the other side prospective people. And then you're going to put them through the process that was their process of fine tuning the the lead, if you will, into being a person that you could actually think about sponsoring. And so the whole idea became not only can you get involved in a business that has limited upside potential, but you can build it with whatever time you have. And I had limited time. I already was involved in the family TV station. I'm already involved in other things. I got like 10, 15 hours a week max that I can work at this.
Uh-huh.
And so it made sense to me. And so yeah, I jumped in and started working. And you really quickly find out if you have if you start to turn back on your objectivity, because at that time, as I went through the process, some red flags did kind of start to come up. But I thought, okay, well, hey, they know better than me
Yeah.
what I need to do to get to where I need to get to. So let me just give it to them. It made my wife kind of mad, frankly. I let them look at some things that was very personable, personal finances, personal investment choices, things that I was doing with my money that they said they needed to figure out how to best help me. And so, hey, let's look at everything you're doing. And they maneuvered money so that I could be able to spend the optimum that I could on growing my business. There should have been the first red flag for me,
Oh,
or the
yeah, yeah.
second red
Let me jump in here because I remember when I first got into the process, they wanted to see my finances as well. What they did was
flag.
they gave
Okay.
me a spreadsheet and I filled in the blanks of how much I was making. So was it something similar with you, or did they actually like look at your bank accounts and stuff like that?
For me, it was more personable, and this is where I think it changes in Amway depending upon, your sponsor. And I do think that if you do build a big Amway business, either you are a massively driven person or you, by luck of the draw, got an incredible sponsor. Because here's my line of sponsorship, guys. At this point, I am sponsored to the guy who is the 12th platinum leg to Larry Winters, who started LTD, right? And so I am getting information directly from the wizard, right? The guy that built one of the biggest Amway businesses ever. And that's not up for, you know, discussion. That's an actual fact.
Mm,
And so if that's the case, then I don't want you to just send me a sheet, man. I want you to sit down and like really help me figure out not just what I'm doing now, but what I need to be doing with my money down the road. So yeah, it was a little bit more involved than just a sheet that I filled out. Like I showed him, we talked about portfolio things, things that I was doing with options, things that he should be doing. We started to exchange different ideas on a level of, man, once we get to here, then your business will be here, and then we can do these things together. And we begin to formulate like a lifestyle plan of how both of us could grow financially, benefiting off of each other's knowledge. All
mhm.
right. Cause I have a lot of the things that I do with my money were taught to me by people that know more about the stock market than 99% of the people out there. So it was a trade, if you will. And so that started to bother my wife. Should have been a red flag to me. Another thing that started to happen was, instead of being like everybody else, okay? And what I mean by that is, instead of doing the system that he was teaching me to do with everybody, I just kind of began to shadow him. And I spent a lot more time than I probably should have kind of learning from him inside stuff, things that you're not going to know how to do unless you just watch somebody how they build their business. And so I began to spend a lot of my time in Raleigh, which is about 45 minutes away from my home. And I neglected a lot of other things. So to answer your question, no, it was not just a financial sheet. It was a lot of changes.
So I'm glad you brought up the fact that you were basically under the diamond of LTD, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And you got different information. You were privy to different information than most of us got because when I was in, it was audios, it was our uplines, it was the platinums, the meetings that we went to. Was your experience the same? Did you end up going to a lot of the meetings, the weekly meetings and network nights, all of those things, or were you really just shadowing under Larry?
Well, it started out that I was doing a lot of those things, but really quickly, it became apparent to me how useless those were. And look, I get it. When you're inside of the belly of the beast, it's very easy to drink the um the Kool-Aid of, I want to continually get reinforced with this positive heroin. I mean, it is very, very tantalizing because you go to these meetings and you think you're building your business, but you're not. Like it
Mm.
you are wasting your time.
Mhm.
And the reason that meetings were ever built, and this is where my education began, I learned why things were what they were. And I learned that they don't have to be that way anymore because of I mean, right now I'm talking to you through a camera, and we're a time zone away from each other. Meetings were built so that once a month and then once a week, you could have the reinforcement of knowing that no matter where you had a platinum leg in your business, they were getting together and formulating a war plan, for a battle plan for the week ahead. All right. Nowadays, you don't need that because you can text a battle plan. You can, if your team is less than 20 people, you can do Zoom calls one on one and figure out what they need to do. So I realized, I remember going into my first meeting and everybody wanted to meet me and everybody wanted to shake my hand because I'm there's new personal leg and da 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 and I've been talked up. And I realized very quickly that for my personal self, I couldn't have my ego stroke like that every week. It was not healthy for me.
Yeah.
Because I have a personality where I can easily let that become something where I feel like I am better than I am kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so I'm sitting there and I'm spending not only that, but you're spending money. I'm spending gas money. I'm spending, I think it was $7 to get into every little thing. And that's not a lot of money, but it adds up because then you start spending for your downline. You start spending gas money for them because you got to get to the meeting. And so I started to really listen not to the meeting so much as the attitude sessions that we had after and trying to figure out like what is there actually to learn from these. And it wasn't anything that you couldn't learn from one, listening to a recording after the fact, or two, just listening to the tapes that they talk about. And so what happened with me was I was expected to be at the meeting, but there was always the availability that I could not go. And people would just, say, hey, Robbie had, something to do. TV got in the way because my business does. I mean, television is an ever changing thing. And so it was easy for me to not go and for people to think that I had something come up. And so I didn't go to a lot of the meetings after the first couple of months, but it didn't hurt the growth of my business. As a matter of fact, I think it helped it because what happens when you're in that environment, meetings specifically, and I'm not just talking about the weekly meetings, I'm then talking about the monthly meetings. And then, you get into what they used to call the quarterly kind of leadership things. All right. I would show up to those. The first time I went to one of those, I remember going to Greensboro, getting a hotel room. I was expected to get in a hotel with everybody else. I didn't want to do that. I got my own hotel room off by myself. I'm at my first big conference, and I think that, I've been led on to believe that this is where the epiphanies happen. This is where, diamonds would sit up in the bleachers and they weren't diamonds yet. And they realized there that, this is when they're going to decide for the first time that this is what I meant to do with my life. And I'm going to, from now on, really like it was painted to believe that if you pay for that ticket, you know, maybe not this time, but the next time, at some point, you're going to have this epiphany. But I'm back here with this experience of being in business on a daily basis, realizing that I've never met anyone who they made a choice at some inspirational point where they're going to now from this point they're going to change their life, and at that point it just everything changed for them. That's not a reality. And so after spending one weekend at this meeting, and I could just go on and on about it because it was a very eye-opening but also overwhelming kind of experience. I like to sleep. I do not like to stay up and be bombarded with information past a certain point. I don't like to then turn around and wake up super early after being up late. But that when you're at a conference like that, your whole world is meant to revolve around getting all the information you can so that when you go home, you have the right information to build your business. However, I'm not going to walk into, like one time we were at, these conferences were 3 days long out of town. First night we were there, we went to a meeting and had to park so far away because we weren't, platinum anything that we got drenched on the way in. And I'm not going to go sit in a meeting soaking wet. So we went home to change. By the time we got back, it was over with. Nobody noticed I was gone. Okay, big deal. So I realized then that, I didn't have to go to everything. And after my first conference like that, going home, getting a few nuggets out of it, but realizing that I had missed the majority of it and my business was still growing, I just decided from that point forward that I was going to get my information from one source, and that was Stephen, unless Larry said something different in front of me, and then I was going to pull from him. And I think that helped me out a lot. And I think for a lot of people going into LTD, what happens is the meetings, and let's not even, let's not forget, the LTD app that at one point was a CD. Now it's an app that you pay for by the month, and you have this overwhelming library of information, this education overload of stuff that you can hear. And I started to really pick up, once I decided to listen, how the longer people were in this business that hadn't achieved a certain level, the less likely they were going to achieve it, because the more confused they were than they were originally.
Wow. Okay, so let's stay right there because
Okay.
you're right. There was an overwhelming amount of audios you could listen to. There
I
was
mean, geez.
in addition to that, there was all of those night owls and the conferences. Audios came out often. And it was easy to get confused listening to them because you would have what your upline diamond was saying, and then a different upline diamond was saying something different. And then a
Mm-hmm.
different diamond was saying something that's contrary to that. So it was
Mm-hmm.
like, what is it? And
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate you talking about the confusion because I didn't really think about that until after I got out and how easy it is for you to realize like what are we doing? Like what is the point of how do you actually build this thing? There's more than
Mm-hmm.
one way to build this thing, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
should I even listen to you? You know, those are questions that
Right.
came up as I was thinking about it after I got out.
And you get this, and there's so many questions that you can unpack there. And so I'll just unpack a few. One is, okay, educational information comes across to your brain in two formats. One, it is inspirational and educational, or two, it is fully educational, meaning the schematics of how to build something, right? Okay, most of those tapes, if you really listen to them, are babble about the lifestyle of a person that has already achieved what they want to achieve. And it's really easy to get soaked into that, put yourself in that life and say, I'm going to have that one day. I'm
Mm,
doing what they did. But then you got to step back and say, am I doing what they did? One, when did they do it? How long ago did they do it? What were the circumstances of which they built their diamond ship on? Because that is the strategic thought process of building a business. It's not about hanging on until you have some epiphany. It's about a real plan. Number two is the educational stuff, the stuff that was really nuts and bolts. In my opinion, I started to really comb through it and realized that if I picked out about 10 audios by Larry and a few other people that Larry listened to, not that were offshoots of Larry, meaning downline of his, meaning go and find audios of people that were diamonds before Larry was a diamond, I could cut out all that other stuff and listen to specific audios until I did what those things said. There were a few things, and this is, again, I'm in the thick of building a business right now. I believe it. I'm going to give my all to it for the next 10 years. This is about 6 months in at this point, and I'm just trying to, because I realize, Crystal, walking into these meetings, how many people in this particular meeting that I'm in have what I want to have? Only one, Stephen,
mm,
the guy that has the Ruby business. And I was taught that, okay, there's two visions here, one Ruby, one Diamond. Because when you build a Ruby ship, a real Ruby ship in LTD pays 15 PV checks or so. If you've got 15 PV checks that you're paying, you can reasonably assert that you can find 6 people to build a diamond ship out of that, right? In order to have 15 PV checks, the numbers are where it comes in, sponsorship and numbers. And I know I'm talking about specific strategies of building an Amway business, and nobody here is really caring about that, but this is where your mind needs to be. versus everybody else is like waiting for the next audio to come out so they can get some nugget out of it that's already been told before.
Right. Yes. It was all repeats. Everything was repeated. Every audio was the same audio, just a different title.
And then you begin, and so these poor people, I mean, I shouldn't say it that way, because these people were really like, I got to know them well and wanted to see them succeed, but they were so confused
Yeah.
because they were listening to five different people talk about how to do something. And I was always taught that you find one person who's done what you want to do and you drown out everything else except that person. And so I just honed in on Steven. Everybody else, I'd go to these meetings and they would confuse me with their, I was doing this week and I was doing that this week. I was taught you do a certain amount of like talking to people in real life would lead to a certain amount of QIs, which is a quality interview,
Uh-huh.
and then the QI would lead to a certain amount of people getting sponsored, and through a certain amount of people getting sponsored, you burn through enough that a few would stick, and then you would start to see a Ruby ship. And
Hmm.
so at that point, why do I need to go to a meeting every week? I know what I need to do. I just need to do it.
Yes.
And so then I started to talk, and I said, look, man, this is what I want to do. Are you okay with me doing it? You know, and he was all on board because again, I'm his personal leg. He wants to see me be a platinum because he is at this point one platinum ship away, maybe two if one falls apart. You want to have one backup from being an emerald, which was his goal because he had already had emerald ship and fallen back from it since I had left and come back into LTD, right?
Uh-huh.
And if none of y'all know this, here's a little insight into the way the Amway business works. This is why it's unfair to people that aren't legacies. And I know life's unfair. Don't put in the comments, Robbie is all about making everybody everything fair. Okay. But there is a certain degree of which that unfairness becomes um favorably put. Just because you're a legacy, you shouldn't have special rules. And here's the special rule. As far as I know, and I've done my research, not just hearing it, but also looking into it. If you're a legacy business, meaning your parents built a diamond ship, you can, if the diamond ship is in the right place and big enough, you can, once you're an emerald, merge with your parents' business and take it over basically for them. And then you become that diamond.
I,
Now, there's formalities in that.
mhm.
And there's probably somebody that knows more about this than I am that is going to throw in those formalities. But so Steven's whole goal while I was there was build an emerald ship with Robbie or somebody else as fast as I can, give Robbie the best blueprint I can so he can do it. And this other guy that he was working with in Asheville, who I can't remember his name, we're going to get them two to platinum. One of them is going to stabilize. I'm going to have my emerald ship. I'm going to merge with my dad's diamond ship, and I'm going to then run LTD.
Okay. So when I was in, I remember hearing about my upline diamond.
Mm-hmm.
So my upline diamond was his
I met him.
parents. His parents were the that were in Brit Worldwide.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I heard was that I'm going to say allegedly because I don't want no smoke when it comes to these people, okay?
I
Uh,
get it.
I heard allegedly what happened was his parents they moved to India and they
Mm-hmm.
left him their like US leg, which
Mm-hmm.
was enough to be a diamond. So that's
Mm-hmm.
basically he inherited his diamond ship. He didn't necessarily build it. He was
Mm-hmm.
able to inherit it. And I was just like, what? I didn't know if
How
that
is
was
that
an
possible?
Amway. Yeah, well, I didn't know if that was an Amway rule. I didn't ever look into it. I didn't know if that was an LTD thing. But I was just kind of like, well, that's you didn't really build the business then. You know what I mean? You don't know how it is to build it from scratch because you came in with a
That's
leg
right.
up. You came in
That's
with
right.
an advantage and you already had a business basically. So it's kind of like, well, how can you sit here and get upset with us? And, when we would have those random meetings and they would say stuff like, you guys aren't building it. I'm like, well, you never built it. Like, what are you talking about?
Right. Because how fair is it to say, okay, and this is where we should start getting away from from some of my experience and talk about how my experience led me to look at this now. So that
Okay. Yeah.
because um you're right. I think, and this is my education, people. So, we can battle it out if you want to, but this is what I've seen. All right. If you have then been gifted that which other people built, you were in a position to be able to build it in a setting that other people are not. A luxury setting, maybe not entirely luxury, because diamonds don't make all that much money when you really get down to it, but you still don't have the pressure of needing to find that next leg. And honest to goodness, folks, there's two ways to build an Amway business. There's the broke, hungry, gotta have it mindset where you're chasing down everybody, even rolling into the McDonald's drive-through just to order and say, "Hey, have you thought about different ways of making extra money?" I've seen it.
I've
Okay.
done it.
Yeah. And that's because you want to be that person that either A, you're really building the business, or you're doing it just to stroke your ego and you want to go to the meeting and say, "Hey man, I did 2 or 3 QIs this week. Please throw some love my way." That's when, if, at that point, if you're doing that, you're probably never going back to building because you're just wanting to get and that's why I stayed away from the meetings, because it was very, very easy for me to say that's what I'm going to do that for versus what I really came in to do it for.
Yeah.
Second, if you're building it that way, you get an experience that is very, very different when you meet people. When you meet people, you're not just having normal conversation. You're trying to insert the different pickup lines that you have learned to get that conversation to turn in favor of benefiting you. So therefore, you become a robot to having life exist for you rather than you exist in a life where you're just kind of living it. Versus, okay, I'll step over here, a person that has been gifted a diamond ship or gifted a business of some sort. You have some kind of income, therefore you can be very choosy. You can go to a restaurant and say, maybe, you know, that waitress that has no idea what it's like to have money is not the best person to um, build a business, because the business mentality is different versus if I can just take my time to court this guy over here that owns and operates a business and wants to build a side asset, which is the better of the two, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have that comfortability that other people don't have versus if I'm there and I'm hungry and I know that I'm spending money, because at this point, if you're building the business, you're really starting to realize that the products are stacking up. You haven't been taught how to retail them, which is supposed to be one of the pillars of the business. You're just consuming them and you're having other people consume them. And so you're spending a lot of money on PV that's not giving you anything in return. And you're going to meetings and the gas. And since your downline is not very profitable yet, you're probably paying for them too. So you are going to jump on that person and you're going to jump on them in a way that's not genuine
Mm-hmm.
versus, and this is my last point on that, versus you're comfortable in building a business because you have the money and you have a certain established of the business so that you can lay back and say, okay, I can be choosy about who I sponsor, when I sponsor. I don't need to sponsor this many legs this year. I need to, you get what I'm saying, Crystal? It's a different mindset.
I do.
And so when I realized that that was his goal, I realized that the goal is not Amway. The goal is LTD. And if the goal is LTD, we're no longer in an Amway product-based business. We are selling education. And if we're selling education, the best thing to do is get as many people on an LTD subscription as possible, which
You
is totally different than building an Amway business. And I know that the two are supposed to go hand in hand. But when you know what I know about how many people make the kind of money they do from LTD, you realize that, yes, Amway is important, but only for the sole purpose that without Amway, you don't have an FTC compliant business.
I'm
And you
so
will,
go ahead.
I'm just saying at that point, it's like, well, if you don't have the products, you can really easily come under fire of these organizations that are going to take away your income.
I'm so glad that I have met you and everybody that I've spoken to, because the general consensus is just the knowledge of knowing that this is not about Amway. This is about LTD and the education system and how that's how they're making their money. And I think once I figured that out, once I realized, because you're right, their products were stacking up.
Yeah.
I was trying to sell stuff and I was, but there was times where it was like, I need to get rid of this soap. But I realized that I was like, I don't need to go to another meeting. I just need time to build this business. And I realized that all this money that we're paying to Amway, to LTD, excuse me, to the subscription, all that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
making money off of, I'm basically paying their lifestyle. Like I'm giving them money to
Mm-hmm.
live their lifestyle off through this education system. And
Mm-hmm.
that was what really bothered me, because they need to disclose that information up front. I
They
feel
should.
they need to let you know that we're getting paid off of the apps, the audios you purchase.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we're getting paid off of, and it needs to be addressed from the beginning. And I know why they don't do it, because if they do it, no one's going to want to join. I want
Mm-hmm.
to go back and I want to
Okay.
commend you for knowing yourself, because you said that you know that once people stroke your ego, you're going to think of yourself more highly than you are. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember talking to somebody before on an interview, Michelle Garabito, she was in Brit Worldwide. She said that
Mm-hmm.
that was one of the reasons why she stayed in for so long, was because she was like a celebrity in
Mm.
everyone knew her name. She'd walk in, people would crowd around her to get to know all this knowledge. So she just stayed in so long because she was popular, you know? She was that girl. And I
It feels
appreciate
good.
you knowing yourself to know like I can't be around that. I'm gonna get big headed, you know?
Mm-hmm. And not only, I mean, and the big head leads to you making, because I was fortunate enough to have been down a road where I know where ego leads you.
Yeah.
And it's very easy for it to then get you into a place where you don't make decisions for the greater good. And honestly, ladies and gents, the Amway business only works if you're building it with an attitude of godly focus on other human beings. And I'm not here to push my religious beliefs on you, but that's where it began. And this is not a video about the history of Amway, though we could do that at some point if you want to, but that's where it began, building serious products that seriously help people in a time where the world was not so connected. Now the world's so connected that we don't need a lot of those products, and we don't need somebody like you or me, Crystal, as an IBO selling it door to door. Therefore, what's the reason for the Amway business to be so big? The reason is it's become a wholesale buyers club where everyone and their mother that gets in it spends that much money on products, and the only people making the money are the people that are making the money off the education, as you just said. Now, here's the kicker to that. You can't be involved in the education unless you're a platinum or above. I figured this out one time because I asked straight up, I said, dude, I want to buy everything that you have. And he
Hmm.
said, all right, here's my LTD subscription. It's 1,000 plus a month. And I said, holy crap. All right, well, let me look. And I didn't do it, but I realized if he's paying that, then what is a emerald paying? What's a diamond paying? And that stack is going to increase. And therefore, I realized that there's where the confusion comes from. That's why they want you to go to every meeting, to
Yes.
be on. And then COVID hit. And then I realized
Yes.
this is a racket, because at this point, guys, you got to realize, okay, I can understand back in the day when I was 19 and it costs money to produce an audio. I own a studio. I know what it costs to produce audio and video type of stuff. And so paying $15 a month back in the day for CEP education made sense. Now you're paying 40, 50, $60 a month for a subscription where literally most of the time all they're doing is ripping audios off of an event that you paid to be there for anyway. Okay. So you paid to be there for them to record an audio that they're later going to sell to you.
Mm.
And you're paying for the event now that cost them very little to put on. See, because during COVID, you didn't go places. During COVID, you stayed home. And
Yeah.
therefore they can't rent out the Greensboro Coliseum. So it cost them way less. And I know They have to have a studio. They have to have upfront costs, right? But and I've got a studio. I know what upfront cost, but that's a one-time cost. And then after that, all of it's profit. And after COVID went out, they didn't go back. They stayed in the studio doing most leaderships now. If you go to them, you will be very, very remiss to find maybe one a year that's at a place. Most of them now, they go and they encourage you to bring your team into your home and have a leadership weekend because
Mm.
they're going to broadcast it to you through Zoom. And it costs so much less money, but the ticket price went up
Did it go up?
100 to 120.
Uh,
Last time I paid, it was like 120. And I know Larry would talk to me and he would talk about, look, you know, you pay for the education because what's $100? What's $120 for your future? But then you sit down and you realize, okay, their goal at LTD has always been 100,000 strong. And I say always because it's been around a while, yet they're still working towards it.
oh,
All right.
wow.
But let's just say they're at 50. I don't know what they're at now, 50 or 60. Okay. $100, $120 a ticket for people that are just, they don't have a business. When you got a platinum ship and above, your ticket price is different and you get other benefits and it doesn't cost them X amount of dollars to rent out an arena. Those profits are in the millions per year. Okay. And that's not split with all the IBOs. That's split with a certain split goes to the Diamond Council that created LTD. And
Oh,
then a certain split goes to the Diamonds of LTD, which is different. You know, being on the council is different than being a diamond in LTD. All right. And then it trickles down all the way to a platinum because once you get to be a platinum, you can start selling audios. And obviously, that's where clout comes in, where when you are somebody in LTD, you sell more audios than other people. Steven, as a platinum, sold more audios than some rubies, right? All right. Because he's Larry Winter's kid. And
mm.
look, man, I genuinely cared about and brother and the whole group of those people. I think what happens is you grow up in a business like this and you really do believe that this is the best vehicle in the world for other people. And therefore, when you believe it, you can sell it not only to yourself, but to other people without seeing the harm that it does.
Yeah. Um, I want to thank you for bringing up the portion where you talked about they went to the conferences via Zoom, you know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's when I realized this is foolishness. I'm paying all this money to sit in my own
Mm-hmm.
living room. And I was like, they're getting over on us because so for me, when that happened, that was when my brain shifted and I was like, this is all a ploy, this is all a scam. It's not real. They're not concerned about actually helping us they're concerned about helping themselves.
Well, I
So
mean,
talk about
okay, go. Sorry, I
so
didn't mean to
talk
interrupt you.
about let's move to when you decided to actually leave. Like you were
Okay.
like, you know what? Um, this isn't what I thought it was. Walk us through your thought process of leaving and then when you decided to leave, what that looked like.
Okay. All right. I I will I will do that. I will first just interject one little thing. All
Okay.
right. This is where I realized the money that was involved in LTD. All right. When you really look at it, and Larry will say it on audios, that's how braggadocious he is about it.
Mhm.
Um, his income increases during leadership months, during months where there's a leadership or where there's a, the red carpet thing where they crown the new diamonds.
Mhm.
And not and so you take that portion and then you realize, okay, so then let's strip it down. I think I told you on our first call about this, and I don't have the exact numbers anymore, but if you really stripped it down, okay, his income per month would be, I believe one time I did the math to like, let's say, a tenth of what it actually is without LTD. Now
Mhm.
he'd still be living really nicely, but when you look at that beneficial income coming in, and then he's happy during times where conferences come around because everybody gets more money. Why don't they do it all the time? Because you can't. force feed a hog but so much, and they don't want to slaughter the golden, the golden hog, the pig that the the goose that lays the golden egg, and that is the LTD family. And that's why that confusion happens. And so to get to your point, how I got out, I slowly started removing the blinders and really thought about, do they benefit more from me being confused or from me building a big business?
Mm.
And it's both. Because if only one in 100 people build a big business, LTD increases in profit.
Mm.
If everyone built a big business, LTD ceases to exist because the house of cards falls. And I know when you're inside of it and you're taught, don't listen to the negative. Don't listen to this cool guy in a suit here because he's talking negative. He went in, he tried, he failed. Where was he? He was never a platinum, he was never a ruby. That's true. But I built a legitimate business. I went into Amway, tried to build a business, and did build it to some degree before I realized that I can't have this work for everybody on my team. It's not feasible. Therefore, I have to be different than I want to be as a person. I have to make my whole life about not only Amway, but LTD. My life is now going to become, no matter my income level, my life is going to become revolved around conferences, revolved around every meeting selling the next conference. And even when people that I know can't afford it, I've got to push it. And I've got to push it to the degree that either I do it or the people that I'm around that I have spent my life building a business with are going to disown me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So at that point, passive income isn't so passive and lifestyle isn't so fun because now I'm in a battle for the rest of my life for attention, for Larry's attention, for how much can I sell something. And when I stop believing in it, what happens? What happens is you leave. There are people, and we could name names of people that had really nice incomes that left. Why? Well, because they had a business that was passive. They didn't need to be there anymore.
No.
No. Yeah, that's not true. For one, they're not still getting, they might still be getting checks from Amway, but not from LTD to the degree that they were. Their Amway check does not allow them to. And that's when you really start. And so then I said, okay, now I really have a dilemma. All right. I can't do this anymore, but I don't want to not do it anymore. I've got friends. I love this thing, but it's turned me into somebody I'm not. So then I started to really look at how much money am I really going to make out of this thing? Because it still is, after all, a business. So can I make enough money to where I can find some balance of being a good person while still building a good Amway business?
Yeah.
And doesn't work, guys.
Oh, wow.
There are rubies, diamonds, uh not so much double diamonds because they do make enough, but certainly diamonds that are always on the cusp of worrying about one leg falling down, changes their entire income structure. Their lifestyle is not what it seems. And the thing about their lifestyle is it's beholden to the Diamond Council of LTD that
Mm-hmm.
can cut them off if they want to, because there is no, LTD is a separate entity than Amway.
Mm-hmm.
It's not controlled by Amway. Therefore, they can do what they want.
Mm-hmm.
So now your check is only the Amway bonus check. Well, trust me, there's a big difference between a diamond bonus check and an emerald bonus check. It's six figures difference,
Wow.
you know, in the year end bonus check and the 2% and the 1%. And so I begin to say, okay, it's not worth it. And
Mm-hmm.
here's why it's not worth it. And I'm not here to shove anything down anybody's throat, but guys, I have done a lot of work in the stock market in my lifetime. And if you break down the average diamond income, 150 to $200,000 a year, sometimes 250 just off of Amway. We're setting aside LTD now because I don't I can't be a part of it, right? I got to build an Amway business. I want y'all to know that most diamonds to get there take 10 to 15 years. And in 10 to 15 years, if you invest right, you use strategies that are out there for anybody to learn for free, you can make an income like that. And it'll be a lot more passive than your Amway business.
Wow. Yeah.
And
Thank
so
you.
that's what I do now. I talk to
Okay.
people about that.
Okay. Okay.
I try to anyway. I,
Yeah.
I I really shy away from the education business because I realize how dark a hole that can be for people. I don't want to be an educator that sells education, but I want everybody to realize that places like LTD wouldn't have the power that they have if we were all taught from a very young age how to be more physically, not just physically responsible, but financially astute to how we can make our money grow for us.
Mhm.
I can show you some simple strategies that you go out and do certain research on covered calls and options. You can start making income on your money very easily and not have to go out and walk down grocery store aisles or go into a bookstore or build you some kind of funnel online to try and get people in. I mean,
Yeah.
I've done it, not just for Amway. I've helped people in other um, multi levels build online businesses because they can't change with the times, meaning the business model doesn't work anymore, right? And so if you're here and you want to get involved with something like that, your whole idea, your whole concept of doing it, I bet, is passive income beach lifestyle. Beach lifestyle doesn't exist.
Mhm.
Passive income is a very difficult thing to build. And passive income is built on one principle, on having enough extra income that you can then worry less about your current income and you can invest that income. And if it does go to zero, it doesn't hurt you. If it doesn't, it becomes passive.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so I know that that was kind of a roundabout way of answering your question. But what happened for me is I just realized that there was only two ways this thing was going to go. I was going to become a person that I couldn't live with. And I was selling it through not only a dream, but a whole American utopia. And my godly self was kind of taken back by trying to be this person. Or the other way it was going to go was I was going to be like a lot of people that I loved in that business that had been in 10, 15 years and hadn't seen a cent. If
Yeah.
you are building a business and you haven't seen a profitable month in 10 years, something's wrong.
Yeah.
So I just cut. I didn't even say goodbye. I just said, look, Steven, I gotta take a step back. COVID did hurt my family business, so I gotta make it, it was a year after COVID had gone away. I was still figuring stuff out. I gotta take a step back. I'll talk to you soon. And I just we never reconnected.
Yeah. You said, okay. Okay. So, what advice do you have for anybody that wants to leave and doesn't know how, or they are set on staying in, they believe they're going to go diamond? What do you
Mhm.
have to say to those two sets of people?
Okay. That's really solid question because it's hard to realistically analyze a dream, right? Because a dream in and of itself is something that and the longer you're in an LTD business, because I don't, the more that that dream becomes like, I just don't want to let it go. And so I'll tell you first and foremost, I'll give Crystal a way that y'all can email me so that when this interview comes out, I'd be glad to talk to you just on a personal basis, phone or Zoom or something to help you work through it. So that you can really understand what you're getting yourself in for if you stay. And so the first person, the person that just I was there, right? And the way to kind of step out of it is for me, it was to evaluate. This is hard because I've you get indoctrinated in that lifestyle to believe that if you build it, it's because the success system works. If you don't, it's because you're a failure.
Correct.
And it irks me because it's not your fault. That's the first thing. Second thing is you got to realize that a business has a life cycle. And the Amway business came around at a different time in America. And now the American economy is at a place where if I were to look at Amway from an objective, can I start a business to compete with Amway? I would never build that business model. A lot of these diamonds that built this, if you really talk to them, they would admit to you that the way that they built it was about timing. They did have a structure to it, but they don't know if they could do it again the same way. Even Larry Winters says himself, you I do not want to work with somebody that wants to go out and kill this thing 5 to 6 nights a week like I did, because that's the idea of the old diamond. The new one is build it with your lifestyle. So it's not your fault because I don't believe, bottom line, the business model, the way it's established works anymore.
Mm.
I would venture for you to say to yourself, is it really me? Am I the failure? Or is the business model a failure? Does it not work anymore? And you say to yourself, no, it works because I see other people succeeding. One, again, what are they succeeding with? In LTD, are they making the money from LTD or Amway? Honestly, figure it out, because that way you can pull yourself away and realize that you can leave with some dignity knowing that it's not your fault, right?
Yeah.
The business model just doesn't work like it used to. And you can then honestly evaluate, what did I learn from this and what can I pull from this and go into my next venture? Because if you've got the dream, then you're going to want to have it. You can't just erase that from your life. You want to find a way to get it. And there's other vehicles out there for you to obtain that dream.
Mm.
I talk to people all the time. I know a guy. Anyway, long story short, you can obtain that dream. Just evaluate and say, I don't want this to be a total loss. In order for it to not be a total loss, how do I gain something from this? What should I take away and what should I strip from myself and just say, this is stuff that was me and now it's not going to be beneficial to me and I need to leave behind. And it's going to take some time. I mean, truthfully, because you've got to rip yourself away from what is personal, positive, sound principles that you can have success with in life and what is just Amway LTD mind numbing like fluff.
Yeah.
And it's going to take some time. So that's the first person. The second person, if you were just like yelling at your screen saying this guy's a traitor, he's telling people inside secrets that he shouldn't, he's bashing LTD, and I want to go diamond just to get over on you, and I don't believe that what you're saying is true. I understand that because there are people that are still there that I have communication with, not regularly but every now and then, and I know that chances are, no matter what they see me do or what I do to try and talk them out of it, they're never going to leave. But I also don't believe that they're ever going to have success. And before I got on this call, I prayed for this to be not a bashing, just an unobjective, unbiased, like, here's what I saw, here's how I look at it now, make your own decision. And can you really tell yourself that you see a diamond ship being beneficial to you and your family with all that I've told you? And if you can, then let me just kind of let me just kind of look at it from this point of view. If you can, what happens if you build that diamond ship and Amway changes the way they do their business? They move out of the US because the only growing market in Amway right now is in other countries besides the US. All right. Number three, you need to really look at you because you don't own your business. Bottom line, you
Yep.
don't. And you can go and try and sell it to somebody else, but they're not going to pay you what you think your time was worth.
Yep.
And so if you still want to build a diamond ship after all that, like if you really want a diamond ship that bad, then go ahead because you're doing it for other reasons other than what you should be building a business for, which is to help your family, to benefit your family, to get your to get your family in a better financial position and then to benefit your community around you with the extra money you have. That's truly what you should be building a business for, unless you're like Steve Jobs trying to change the world with a product. You're not doing that with Amway. So if you're building a business for that purpose, I really don't think that when you get there, the money's the money's going to be there. Does that I, I don't think so. I just don't think so.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your perspective and your insight. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching that interview. Let me know your thoughts, what you thought about Robert's experience. If you're still in, if you're thinking about leaving, let me know what you think about the interview and just your thoughts in general. Again, I appreciate all the emails, the comments, people sharing their opinions. I really appreciate the conversation that we've been able to have in the comment section and also over email. Of course, if you want to file a complaint with the FTC, I have the link linked below as usual. And to all those who have filed, I think it's coming to a head. So I just encourage those who have not filed to do so. I think it's a real way to actually stop a lot of what's going on in Amway and these Amway motivational organizations. To stop what's going on in these Amway motivational organizations. So thanks again for watching. Have a great day and I'll see you in the next interview.